This is Radio 4. Tonight's edition of the current affairs show Burning Questions, which was to look at the issue of too much sports coverage on radio and television, has been postponed due to the Olympics.
We present Olympiod 88.
Once every 4 years, the greatest athletes in the world gather together and for 3 weeks compete in the pursuit of excellence in an amateur tournament for the love of sport. Then they go home, and for the other 3 years and 49 weeks, they make as much money out of it as possible.
The Olympics. The very words conjure up pictures in the mind of every person on the planet who likes sport, has a television, an understanding family, is a raving insomniac, and can take 6 solid hours of David Coleman at a time.
Hello and welcome to the very heart of this great inscrutable eastern city.
Welcome to Norwich, where the BBC has put us to save money. From here we'll be linking via satellite to Seoul, getting the latest news, views and analysis, and chatting to any old clapped-out ex-athletes we can drag off the street to fill up the long gaps where there's nothing happening.
Let's have a look ahead to some of the items we'll be bringing you. Just part of our exclusive interview with top Bulgarian weightlifter Mikolai Liftoff. We'll also be looking at the history and traditions of the Games and asking the question on everyone's lips. Why on earth have Channel 4 got Barry Norman doing sports coverage? But first, we go live to Seoul, and our man on the spot, Ron Wittering.
Ron's fast asleep because, of course, in Seoul it is in fact the middle of the night. Either that or he's watching Albania play Mongolia at table tennis. We'll come back to him later. Meanwhile, we'll be examining the vexed question of drugs in sport and the shattering disappointment of waking up next morning to find you only hallucinated a new world record. We'll also be getting all the latest news from the British camp and asking,
why did the British have to camp? Why couldn't they have stayed in the Olympic Village with all the other teams?
But now, let's look at some of the highlights of the last week.
And just look at this, 9.5, 9.5, a 9, 8.5, 9.5, 9, 9.5. Those are the mortgage rates these divers were paying just 2 months ago, and it's not surprising they're queuing to jump off this board.
I think now we've managed to wake up our man in Seoul, and we've got him on the phone. Ron, I gather there's a bit of a time delay on this line.
About 3:30.
Yes. What have been the highlights of this first week?
Yes, there's a time delay of 5 or 6 seconds.
Very funny, Ron.
Highlights, Ron?
Well, we saw the Korean demonstration sport of Taekwondo, which consists largely of kicking your opponent around the trunk and head, and in which the Koreans were only beaten by a team of English football supporters. The rowing was unpopular with the Korean spectators, drawing a crowd only slightly larger than the SDP conference.
What about the boxing?
The spectators or the competitors? Yes, the Korean tried to turn the boxing into a participation sport, while of course the plan to merge all the European teams into one super team have been scotched by the Prime Minister.
Well, thank you, Ron Wittering, in Seoul. Later we'll be telling you everything you never particularly wanted to know about the Games. Did you know, for instance, that the official languages of the Olympics are French and English?
And David Coleman.
Les langues officielles des Olympiques sont le français et l'anglais.
A David Coleman OC. But now, Fact Fiends, some statistical background to the Seoul Olympics.
The Seoul Olympics is a 16-day tournament consisting of 23 sports and 237 events. The 11,700 media personnel are only just outnumbered by the 13,000 competitors and officials.
And David Coleman.
These and many other useless facts are, as you've probably guessed, handed out free to all commentators to help fill up the long gaps between races.
And here, courtesy of the official Seoul Organising Committee colour brochure, are some official facts and figures about the city of Seoul. The average temperature there is 18.1 degrees centigrade. That's 65 for you Fahrenheit fans. The humidity is 70%, the wind velocity is 1.9, and the average sunshine 6.7 hours, and the average air pressure 1,016.5 millibars.
Yeah, that's the sort of utterly pointless information which really is for use only in absolute emergencies, like a half-hour wait while they teach the band a new national anthem after the Windward Islands have accidentally won a gold medal.
The official mascot of the Games is Hidori, the tiger.
Strange choice for a mascot, Hugh, a ferocious man-eating carnivore.
Well, that's where you're wrong, Steve, because according to the Seoul Organising Committee's brochure, in Korea the tiger isn't thought of like that. The tiger is thought of more, and I quote, as an entertaining humorist.
Well, that's not all. Here is the official brochure of the Seoul Olympic Organising Committee talking about the main athletics stadium.
The Olympic Stadium is an astounding example of sculptural aesthetics expressed in architectural form.
Oh, definitely, Brian.
The lines of the structure's profile imitate the elegant curve of Chosun dynasty porcelain vases.
Well, there you are, the first time ever that a major sporting tournament has been held in a vase. And of course, don't forget that the swimming pool building imitates the elegant curve of a Chosun dynasty pre-stressed concrete sports hall.
The brochure also informs us of what's going on in the city apart from the sport. For example, at the National Museum of Seoul, there's an exhibition of Korean cultural assets, including porcelain vases and entertaining humorous tigers.
Right, now let's turn to one of our studio guests, Bernie Thorpe. You once came 83rd for Britain in the men's running 2 laps and then falling over. Do you remember any great Olympic mascots of the past?
Well, of course, in my day it was much tougher and we didn't have any of these steroids and we didn't...
Mascots, Bernie.
Well, in Munich in 72 we had Waldy the Dachshund, in 76 it was Amick the Canadian Beaver, in 1980 it was Miska the Bear, in 84 in LA we had Sam the Olympic Eagle.
And this year, of course, we have the entertaining humorous tiger. Any ideas what Britain's putting forward for Manchester's 1996 bid?
Gary the Golden Retriever, I believe, or possibly Sharon the Hurdling Hamster.
Personally, I like Amsterdam's Nicky the Olympic Chicken. So there you go. So, we look at the Olympics, the history, the traditions, the events, the personalities, the struggle, the heartache, the agony, the triumph, and the silly hats they wear in the cycling.
An Olympic medal is the greatest prize in sport, for with an Olympic medal comes glory, personal achievement, and enormous sponsorship deals.
We'll be looking at it from all sides of the coin.
All sides? How many sides has the coin got then?
After all, one man's fortnight of exhilarating, heart-lifting athletic excellence is another man's 2 weeks of mind-numbing, coma-inducing tedium, as another bunch of dullards in coloured vests lumber round a track. But who can honestly say their heart doesn't thrill to the sight of the world's greatest athletes, charging off that final bend in the primeval quest for the superlative?
I can. I can honestly say that doesn't do anything for me at all.
Well, you don't count. Let's look at some of the facts and figures. The Olympic motto is Citius, Altius, Fortius.
What's that?
The Olympic motto.
What does it mean?
It's Latin.
Yes, but what does it mean?
Faster, higher, stronger. The decision to stage
Well, that's
the games
not a very
at
good
Seoul...
motto, is it?
That's the motto of the International Olympic Committee. The decision to
It's
stage
just not
the
very
games...
appropriate, really. I mean, higher, faster, stronger isn't very relevant if you're a small ball rifle shooter or a high diver, is it?
The decision to stage...
It ought to be faster, higher, stronger, most accurate, and in the opinion of the judges, most technically proficient.
That's too long. Just shut up. Now let's have some more facts and figures. The decision which gave the 1988 Games to Seoul in South Korea was taken at an IOC meeting in Baden-Baden on September the 30th, 1981.
Gentlemen, you have now heard the principal bids from these major world cities to host the Games in 7 years' time. Now it is our decision, bearing in mind all political, economic, historical and socio-geographic factors, to choose the winner. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe, catch a third world ethnic minority person by his toe. If he threatens to boycott, let him go.
Steve, what was it you were saying about small ball shooting?
Eh?
It's just that I know a frightfully funny joke about small ball shooting.
Yes, I think we can guess. Let's have a look at tonight's events. Not in Seoul, but here in Britain. The special gold medal for Olympic TV viewing. We're down to the final between P. Chadwell of Osvestry and J. Simpkin of Manchester. Simpkin's been training for this Olympic marathon by watching all-night television for the last 12 months. He's just limbering up now as we join the action live in his living room.
I'm going to bed now, dear.
All right, dear.
You're not going to sit here all night, are you?
Oh, yes, dear. It's the semi-final of the women's 400 metres backstroke while shooting clay pigeon relay tonight. I think it's on now.
True dedication. His opponent, P. Chadwell, is a seasoned all-night coverage watcher. In the last Olympics, he kept his eyes open even through the shot put and the 50-kilometre walk, although he was once hypnotised to sleep by one of Desmond Lynam's jumpers. He really punishes himself in training, sitting through 6-hour videos of Howard's Way. After that, he reckons he can stay conscious through anything the Olympics can throw at him. It's midnight, the coverage has started, and it's over to our commentator at the scene.
Yes, and Chadwell's going well. He's alert, he's wide-eyed, and Simpkin is behind at this stage. They're watching the 3-day event, and Simpkin admits that if he has a weakness, it's anything involving horses. Sure enough, his eyelids are drooping, but if he can make it through to the boxing, he'll be awake till at least 1:30. Now Chadwell's wobbling. He's in trouble. He's fine with horses, but his weak area is people throwing things. Javelin, discus, and hammer throwing have the same effect as a bowl full of Mogadon. And oh dear, Chadwell's gone. He's dropped off at only 2:10.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think we can now go back live to Seoul and join Ron Wittering in the swimming pool.
Here I am in the swimming pool, and now back to the studio.
The history of the Olympics is littered with great names of personalities who will never be forgotten. Names like Lassie Viren, the faithful collie dog from Finland, who won gold medals at 5 and 10,000 metres, and then went on to star in a string of films.
And now we look at running, perhaps the oldest sport in the world. After all, as a sport, its rules are very simple. You put one foot in front of the other as fast as possible. It's not exactly contract bridge or American football, is it? Early man ran frequently, sometimes for the exhilaration and sometimes to avoid being eaten.
Man ran to catch food, and indeed the earliest running races looked rather like greyhound races today. 8 Stone Age men in lanes who didn't start running until something edible went past them. It was, of course, in ancient Greece that athletics really began.
And it was here that the Olympics were founded at Olympia, a large exhibition centre in Athens which also staged the Greek ideal home show, although Plato, of course, argued that there could be no such thing as an ideal home.
The first ever Olympics took place in 776 BC, and the first ever Olympics winner was one Koroibos of Elis, who went on to be a team captain in the 775 BC series of A Question of Sport. It's impossible to underestimate the significance of these 4 yearly Olympiads to the Greeks. The word Olympiad, incidentally, doesn't mean just a tournament. It refers to the whole 4-year cycle, although the 4-year cycle race was abandoned as too tiring.
Fact. The Greeks did not compete for medals, but for garlands and occasionally shields or olive oil. Indeed, medals came along after many athletes complained of feeling ridiculous standing on a podium with a bottle of olive oil round their neck.
Greek athletes performed entirely naked, the high jumpers lending a whole new meaning to the Fosbury flop. There could also be considerable embarrassment during relay changeovers.
One of the best-known stories of the ancient games concerns Phidippides, who ran the first marathon and died at the end.
Oh, the battle is ours. Here, Phidippides, go tell the king of our victory.
But, General, that must be about 26 miles, 365 yards.
Go, run.
Oh, all right.
And here, after 2 hours and 35 minutes, comes Phidippides into the palace.
Your Majesty, the result of the war was...
Oh dear, I thought he rather faded at the end there. Anyway, he really does need to improve his finish.
A lot of Greek events were sports which had practical applications. Many of them were based on military skills. It is fortunate that the javelin has not been updated to its modern-day equivalent, since this would be the short-range bazooka.
The javelin was, of course, an important military skill in those days, as was wrestling. And running extremely fast came in very handy, especially when the javelin and wrestling failed. The role of the discus in combat was uncertain, although it may have been a sort of Greek frisbee with which the soldiers relaxed between battles.
Although some of these ancient Greek events have survived into the modern tournament, others have fallen by the wayside. One such event was throwing the kebab. This was a triathlon comprising throwing the doner kebab, throwing the shish kebab, and on the final day, the difficult hurling of the mixed chicken kebab.
Fact. In AD 680, the chariot race was introduced, a sport dominated for many years by Charlton Heston. Another event in these ancient games was ox cart racing, which had to be abandoned because of the difficulties with training. People laughed so much when oxen went jogging past in their tracksuits that doctors feared for their safety. Fact. The Greeks had another event from 520 BC onwards, which was based on military skills and which would be very difficult to restage today. That event was a race in armour.
You join us here at Olympia for the men's semi-final of the 100 metres in armour. Looking across the lanes, in lane 1, that's, I can't actually see who it is, but in lane 2 there, it's, not clear on that one. Lane 4 is somebody else. And they're under starters' orders.
On your marks, get set, go, Winnie.
And, this is quite stunning. It's going to be a very long afternoon.
The Romans did not take to athletics in the same way as the Greeks. Historians see essential differences in the cultural attitudes of the two races, differences which can be summed up roughly thus. The Greeks celebrated youth, vigour and the strength and grace of the young human body, while the Romans liked lying around stuffing themselves with food and wine until they threw up. Indeed, at the Roman Games of 56 AD, the only event which really took off was the 100 metres lying around stuffing yourself with food and wine until you threw up, which was won by Marcus Abesius the Praetor, who covered the 100 metres to the sick bucket in 11.2 seconds.
The really popular events at Roman Games were those which involved the consumption of religious minority groups by large wild mammals. The Christians attempted a boycott of the 150 AD Games, while 4 years later a retaliatory boycott by the Lions virtually brought the tournament to a halt, a situation not helped by the fact that 2 of them came from South Africa.
The original Games ran for over 1,000 years, 1,169 years to be exact, the 293rd Olympiad in AD 393 being the last. Why? Professor Nigel Glottalstops is the Professor of Obscure Research at the taxpayer's expense at the University of Rhodes Boyson in Cheshire.
I don't think the Romans really enjoyed the Olympics as much as the Greeks. The new events were very unpopular.
What new events were these?
The Romans introduced events like synchronised emperor stabbing, which never really caught on.
Here at the Forum in Rome, you join us for a magnificent display of synchronised emperor stabbing, and this really is a world-class performance.
How did the Olympics survive? Well, we'll find out later on in the programme, but first, I think it's time to go live to Seoul and Ron Wittering.
Well, you join us in this magnificent Olympic stadium where there is seating for more than 65 spectators and more than 85,000 television commentators, teams of journalists from every newspaper and broadcasting organisation in the world, and in fact, yes, I think in fact we're just in time for the coverage of the opening ceremony. This magnificent parade of the teams of journalists into the stadium, in alphabetical order, leading off with the Abu Dhabi Weekly Gazette, Albanian Television, Radio Amsterdam. What a heart-stopping sight. These marching formation squads of several thousand of the most unfit, thoroughly out-of-condition individuals in the world. There's the team from the Independent going round the wrong way. And don't forget, we've got coverage coming up of the men's 100 metres, the women's 200 metres, the men's 4x400 metres, the women's 4x100 metres, and a 4x200 metres for anyone who feels like it, plus the men's 20,000 metres under the sea.
And here in the studio we have the all-purpose Olympic result. In first place, the plucky little third world part-timer. Second, the steroid-stuffed East German commie automaton. And the gallant British loser, trailing in a very respectable 98th. In fact, while we're on that subject, it's time for this week's rundown of the top 10 British sporting excuses.
At number 10, it's that old favourite. Since I arrived here, I've had a bit of a stomach upset.
Ah, yes, foreign food, always a good one. Straight in at number 9, it's the climate here, the humidity is incredible.
At number 8, no change. It's still that great classic. I don't know what happened, but I think someone jostled me on the back straight.
Filthy cheating foreigners, as popular as ever. Number 7 is up from last year's number 10. I ran a very fast heat and I haven't had time to recover.
Number 6. Good to see a re-entry for one of the great classics of the excuse scene, the all-time golden oldie. It's the old Achilles tendon.
Number 5, that old summer favourite. I haven't had time to acclimatise.
And at number 4, it's a new entry. I blame Nigel Lawson.
Into the top 3, and at number 3, it's we don't really have the facilities in Britain and we just don't encourage young talent. And
Stop that one there, it goes on for 3 hours. That is, of course, the tennis excuse. And at number 2, it's a brand new entry. I missed the bus to the stadium and they wouldn't let me in.
But at number 1, for the umpteenth year running, the top British sporting excuse, I wasn't as good as everyone else.
The Olympics is, of course, a tournament full of great traditions. The famous Olympic symbol, for example, the 5 endless rings, symbolising the 5 endless weeks of television coverage.
The 5-ring symbol, which actually symbolises the 5 continents linked by the Olympic ideal, is part of the Olympic myth stretching back into antiquity, right back to
1920, actually, Hugh. Designed in 1913.
Oh, well, let's return to the great Olympic traditions, beginning with the journey of the torch. The torch is lit in the sacred grove at Olympia by the attendants of the goddess Hera. I have with me Aphroditana, minion of the eternal flame, and attendant to the great Olympian.
Hello.
Tell me, do you enjoy this work?
Well, it's a laugh, innit?
Tim Brankin carried the torch through northern Austria en route from Athens to Munich in 1972. Tim, tell us about it.
Well, it's a great honour, isn't it?
And what are the main problems?
Well, I was running along quite a narrow stretch of road and, well, I looked round and it had gone out, you know.
God, you never told me.
I thought, oh, God, I'll have to go back to bloody Greece and start all over again, you know. I mean, I was halfway through the Alps by this time.
So, what did you do?
I used my fag lighter.
I see. Any other major difficulties?
Well, the most difficult bit, I suppose, really, is when you stop off for the night.
Single room, please.
I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing available.
You what?
We do have a strict rule. No naked flames.
That's me torch.
Well?
I like to have it at the foot of my bed. I've got a special stand for it.
We don't allow overnight stays by flaming torches in guest bedrooms.
Look, I've got to get some kip. I've got to run a 12-mile leg to Garmisch, Ruddy, Perton, Kirken tomorrow.
You'll have to put the torch out before we can give you a room.
Put it out? It's the bleeding Olympic flame.
So?
Kindled on Mount Olympus and burning continuously to the closing ceremony of the Olympiad. I mean, it's not some sort of combustible cat. I can't put it out for the night.
I'm sorry, sir. In that case, the torch will have to stay outside.
Stay outside? It can't stay outside. Suppose it rains.
Well, it can't sleep inside. It will set off all the smoke detectors.
Look, I can't put it out. What am I supposed to say to the Olympic Committee when I arrive at the stadium?
I don't know.
Here it is, the sacred flame, alight continuously, except for the odd morning when I had to whip out the old swan vestas. They might as well have a colour-gas cylinder up there and get some blokes in for the gas ball to turn on the ceremonial stopcock. Now, will you stop all this nonsense and give me a double room for me and me torch?
All right, sir, but I must tell you, it's highly irregular. Now, will the torch be wanting dinner?
I believe God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel as... Oh, it's the hamstring again.
Joseph Swiftman was Britain's great hope in the 1924 Olympic 400-yard race.
Run up, old man!
Dash it all, it's got to be the fastest chap advanced here. I'm a monkey's uncle.
By Jove, I do believe I can win a gold medal if I work at it.
As he explained to his sweetheart, Mary Hartington, one night over supper.
You see, Mary, I have to do it. For the honour of my country and something deep within me. There will have to be certain sacrifices.
I know. No bonking, you mean?
But disaster struck the day before the big race.
You cad, Swiftman. You unutterable rogue. You've been taking steroids again.
Soon Swiftman was facing all the tribulations of a successful athlete.
How can I run on the Sabbath?
Why not?
I'm supposed to be doing blankety blank.
Sorry to interrupt, but over to Ron Wittering in Seoul.
Thank you. Well, down there before us is the Olympic track. 400 metres of an 8-lane hell. And that's just over 400 yards for those of you watching in black and white. Well, thanks to the miracle of satellite transmission, we will not only be bringing you these events live, but owing to the time lag on the shorter races, I should be able to tell you who's won before the races started.
Thanks, Ron. Now, back briefly to the story of the Olympics. The revival of the modern games had its roots in 1892, when the Frenchman Baron Pierre de Coubertin told the French Union of Athletic Sports,
With your assistance, I can work for and eventually realize on a basis properly in tune with the conditions of modern life, the re-establishment of the Olympic Games.
However, it is true to say that France in the 1890s was not the most sports-minded of nations. Marcel Proust, in his masterpiece À la recherche de temps perdu, says very little on the subject of the triple jump. And amongst the great works of Monet, Cézanne and Pissarro, we do not find Reclining Hurdler or Le 4x400 metres relay sur l'herbe. The French responded unenthusiastically to de Coubertin, suggesting a tournament consisting of boule, Pernod drinking and can-can races.
And next week, we'll be looking at the modern games, how venues are selected, the commercial side of the Olympics, new events for next time round, plus, of course, keeping you up to date with the very latest news. Well, that's about it from us here at Olympiod 88. But don't forget that in common with the rest of the BBC, Radio 4 will be featuring non-stop Olympic coverage all through next week, including Desert Island Discus, In a Physiotherapist's Chair, False Start the Week, and, of course...
The Archers.
Goodbye.
Olympiod 88, results coming in. The team was Paul B. Davies, just scraping home to qualify, Hugh Dennis, despite hitting his head on the diving board, Joanna Mackie with a new record and a gramophone to go with it, Jeremy Stockwell with that controversial split decision, and Steve Punt, who also made the gallant attempt at the script. At the end of the day, the producer was Bill Dare.
And there's another chance to hear Olympiod 88 at 5:25 tomorrow afternoon on Radio 4 Longwave.